ready.
Welcome to another episode of Buff in the Rough. Today we're going to talk with Dick McVay about a hound named Duct Tape, a first date with his future wife that included a stop to check out a hound he was interested in buying, the time he ran so hard while judging that he puked, the 30-06 experiment, and a whole lot more. Please help me welcome Dick McVay to the show. Well, hey, Dick, how are you?
I'm fine. How are you, Sam?
I'm doing just fine. I really appreciate you taking time out of your schedule to spend with us today and talk about dogs. I'm looking forward to it. I've got a whole list of things I want to ask you about, and we'll just hit as many as we can and have a good time doing it. So thank you again for joining us today. But
I appreciate you having me on.
Well, before we get started, for folks that maybe don't know Dick McVay, what could you tell us a little about yourself and maybe how you got into beagles?
My family, my dad's had dogs for years, coon hounds and so forth, and I'm the fourth of five brothers. A lot of you know Donnie and Dave, and I have a brother between them named Danny, and then I'm the fourth born, and then there's Denny. You know, they hunted coon hounds and stuff with Dad early. And then I got into it, you know, with McVay's Black and Tans. I started just showing. My brother Danny was ahead of me showing dogs, and he was very active in it. He'd done a lot of major winning with the Black and Tan coon hounds for my dad. But I was just a little bit young, you know, so that's where I started in dogs. And then, to be honest with you, I started learning, you know, I started playing music when I was 13. I still coon hunted a lot, and had me a little bird dog that I played with every now and then with some friends. But we went on for bat, and my brother Donnie actually come up to my house. I moved back down here working as a machinist, and my brother come up and said, "I got a dog, you know, for you." I'm like, "What do you mean you got a dog for me?" He said, "No, we're going to get you in, you know, beagling so you don't have to kick brush anymore out in the field." You know, I'm like, I said, "Okay, so I'm getting promoted, right?" You know, so that's how it started. My brother Donnie McVay Jr. told me about a couple pups that he bought, and he's like, "You want one of these?" And I'm like, "Yeah, bring me up one, what's ever available." So he brought it up, and I remember the pup having duct tape around its belly.
What?
And I told him, I said, "If I pull that duct tape off, is he going to fall apart, or what's going on here?" And he said, "No, that's to hold a marble. He's got a ruptured umbilical cord from the pup as a puppy. His mother ruptured his umbilical cord. Must have not have got it chewed off the umbilical cord in time, or something happened there." So I called the dog Duct Tape. Old Duct Tape, you know, he barked the whole night. Donnie brought him up, and I thought, "Donnie, you give me a mess here." But I turned him loose, and he ran and lived in the house. But he went right up on the hill. My brother Donnie's got an eye for a dog. I want to give him credit for that. The dog just went up in the woods and just started itself. So, you know, I didn't know what he was running. I knew he was running something up there. I was messing with my horses. But it got going pretty good. And I called him. I said, "Man, that dog's really running rabbits up here." Well, it wasn't much longer after that. He got into some rat poison that the neighbor's teenager put out and didn't tell nobody, and he got into that. He liked to go down to the neighbors, get treats, and the girls would play with him. Well, they just felt so sorry because it killed him. He died of rat poison. So I was out of the dog business early in the game, and a cousin heard about it, and you know, and it was something you couldn't help. You know, they were it was God's will. You know, I told him, I said, things happen and life's got to go on. So I had a cousin heard about it. He called me, and boy, he had the most beautiful chocolate beagle. Oh, this dog was so beautiful. And he brought that dog up to my house, and I'm like, "How much?" He's like, $200. I was like, "I'll take it. It runs rabbits." "Yep, runs rabbits." And I thought to myself, okay. So I was all excited to take the dog out, turn it loose on a rabbit I seen. It probably took it 12 and a half minutes to go 25 feet.
Oh, my goodness.
I mean, I was sitting there thinking, when did they cross turtles into beagles? You know what I mean? Somebody made this dog like blowing holes in the ground. The most beautiful dog in Coshocton County. This dog's like, it ain't moving. You know, it was like watching paint dry.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm thinking, I'd freeze to death before I ever shot anything off of that dog. So anyway, so I'm thinking, okay, Donnie, the umbilical cord, the duct tape dog, I had to heal up. And I called old Donnie, and I think, hey, Donnie, I got this beautiful beagle. You got to come up and get him. And so he came up and got him, and he seen him. He just had to have him. I'm like, okay. I'm like, wait till you see this boy run. He's going to give you a treat, you know what I mean? It's like passing off a first date, you know? So anyway, Donnie took the dog, and lo and behold, you know, Donnie could do things with dogs that, you know, a lot of people think my dad has a special gift, but he sure did pass it down to him. Mm-hmm. He did too. You know, I gave him a dog one time out of Michigan out of Vermont. It was given to me that, you know, was scared of rabbits, and he turned around and won the national championship with it in UKC. So, you know, Donnie's an excellent dog trainer, and he can bring out the best in a dog. Yeah, so I was out of the dog business again, and so I was working there. They wanted to start an ARHA club here in Coshocton, and a co-worker was telling me about it, and I'm thinking, okay, I'm going to go get a real good dog. So the Amish country wasn't very far away, so I thought, let's try there, you know. And I started driving around and asking boys, who's the best dog in the area? You know, and I was like 30 miles away from where this dog was. And I kept hearing this name, Old Doc. No matter where I went, I would catch somebody on a bicycle. I'm looking for a good beagle. Who's got the best dog you've ever heard of? And Old Doc. I mean, it's like, I got to find this dog. So I went up in the Amish country. I finally tracked him down, found him, went up and watched him run. Boy, what an amazing dog. Couldn't buy him. Could not buy him for love or money. So I left and went back up later. Actually took my wife to be on our first date to go look at a beagle dog. Mm-hmm. And I took her out to dinner. I took her out to a nice dinner, but she's like, this is the first date I've ever been on that somebody took me to look at a dog go hunting, you know. So we pulled in, and the dog had got run over by a buggy, and his shoulder was messed up.
Oh.
And I just told him, I said, you know, I could see the family didn't have the money to spend the extra money on him, but he was getting around. We took him to the vet, seeing what it was going to cost to do it. I told him, I said, I'm willing to pay the vet bills on him and get him healed up if we can have him. And they had his father. His father was named Chubby. And anyway, so we got Old Doc, and we come back, and that's where we started with him. And we put him in trial. We got him all healed up. I remember Carla and my mom communicating back and forth, because my mom has healed more sick animals than you can shake a stick at.
Wow. You
know, between my mother-in-law, my father-in-law, and I just sucked in all the overtime I could to pay for all this mess. Mm-hmm. And between my dad, you know, both my in-laws and my parents, and Donnie and Dave, you know, my family was just great. We got Doc fixed up to where he held his right leg out. So he was known as a three-legged dog to watch out for in the field trials. Best snow dog I've ever seen. But anyway, that's where we started, and just went from there. My friend moved on to, starting, the Coshocton County Beagle Club. We worked on that as the RHA first out of Coshocton Sportsman's Club. We started out there with Jim Hughes and Phil Schrickle and a couple other guys, Dwayne Stocker.
Well, Dick, would you mind to maybe talk a little bit about that? I think it's really important to make sure we have good, strong clubs in the country. And if you were a part of starting a club or there close to the beginning, you know, what did it take to take a club like that from nothing or humble beginnings and grow it into something successful?
The person with the most desire to make it happen has to give up leadership to do all the grunt work. Mm-hmm. He's got to realize he'll be a leader later, and that's the only way you can make it.
That's really interesting.
It's hard getting help. It's hard getting participation and help cleaning up dog crap after a hunt. So the Sportsman's Club people are not complaining about it. It does trap shoot night or whatever. Mm-hmm. Getting judges lined up. That was probably one of the biggest things I did when I brought Everett Morgan in. We were in the early stages of ARHA. They were struggling. And it was getting judges. That was our problem. We were failing because, we were just couldn't get enough judges. And I had an ideal to go to the Amish country and see if we could get these young Amish boys to judge, and they could make money, $20 a cast. And brought Everett Morgan in, and he come to my house, and we set up a plan that we were going to get these Amish, and we started a club up at Farmerstown. But I didn't lead that club. I just did all the networking to get connecting the people to make it work. And Jay Hirschberger, actually, he came into ARHA, and I met Jay Hirschberger on a money hunt he had a money hunt to go out and hunt and shoot 12 rabbits, the first team back, and we got an invitation with Tim Guthrie, and it was Dan Wolf and Tim Guthrie and myself, and there was one other guy there, Ronnie Fisher, and we went up there and we won it. And Jay was like, we got to do this. So that kind of hooked the whole thing. You got one. Jay was the driver behind the seat of getting the Amish boys to jump over to judge, and he ended up winning the ARHA World Hunt.
Wow.
Later with his dog. So starting a club, I think it comes down to seeing the right people that are not going to give up and keep pushing forward on it because they love and they have such a enjoyment out of running dogs. It's finding them people, like my dad, my brothers, and then take care of, if this is what you want, you say, okay, I want to start a club. If you want to start a club, realize your goal is to make sure you take care of everything that nobody wants to do. If you want it to be successful, you got to do everything nobody wants to do. The paperwork, the calling, the long talks with people. If you're not a talker and starting a club, you're gonna struggle because you need to really get out there and network it. And if you do, and then just use your creativity to find ways to build funds and build the organization. And like when I told you earlier in one of the conversations we had privately, starting the first UKC hunt. I went out with my wife. We took pictures of our land. We did everything and sent it off to Todd Morgan and said, we'd like to have a charter. We kept working on, are we good enough? We've got members, and that type of stuff. And then they granted us a charter. And that's how the Coshocton County UKC hunts started happening here in Coshocton.
That's a cool story. That's a really cool story. But, Dick, I want to ask you about something. You hit on it just briefly, but you talked about how important good judges are. I could not agree with you more. I think that is one of the biggest things you can have for a club to make it successful, good judges. But you've hunted several different styles of hunting. And have you been the kind of judge that runs around with the dogs? I mean, you got to be in good shape to do something like that. Have you been that style of judge?
Well, why I became a judge? I've seen people come to judge for a lot of reasons. Some good, some bad. Political, non-political. We've all seen it.
Sure.
But I became a judge to find the best of the best. And I told myself, because I was always out there judging, whether it was performance pack, PKC, UK, whatever. And the best judging I ever had was in ARHA because I'm running behind the dogs. I remember a dog named Larson's Native Girl at the World Hunt in Nelberfield, Indiana. That dog brought me to my knees puking, trying to stay with her. I watched so much amazing moves that this dog made, and I said, I'm going to have this blood in my line when I go that direction. But this dog was just I didn't want to miss nothing. I was obsessed with being in that spot, wanting to see every great thing that this dog pulled off. It's like when you're on that gravel road. I wanted to make sure I was on that gravel road so I could see if that dog pulled it off. And just stay with a pack of dogs and how they competed, how she intimidated a pack of dogs. Her hunt, her search was phenomenal. She won the ARJ World twice. If
Wow.
that gives you an idea of
Wow.
what. And I judged her as an open dog. You know what I mean? And then into the champions, and then into the grands. You know, so I've seen a lot of her. Steve Van Tynen out of Michigan had her at that time, and I remember him putting a tattoo on his arm from her, and that's what, you know, that makes me say, you know, but I would have Steve come back and say, "How my dog did?" "Oh, Steve, your dog did a great job." I never told anybody she brought me to my knees, but but that's what I did. I just went out there and I ran after them dogs, and, you know, dogs like Swartz is big time, and Bruner's Lucky, and, you know, I've seen some of the most amazing dogs shuffle a rabbit, and, you know, I'm long-legged, I could fly, you know, and you know, I would, you know, take shortcuts to make sure I got to a place where I knew I wanted to see what happened when we hit that creek, or when we hit that hollow up the side, or we hit them pine trees, and we get in that soybean field. Let's see what's happening. And it was all about building my breeding program. It's about saying what I was doing, and I kept a lot of that back. I was like, you know, I'm not going to go out here and break my neck and just say, okay, well, I did this for an hour, and you want me to tell you what I learned in an hour and 1 minute?
Right.
Nah. I always complimented everybody's dogs. You know, I was like, you got a good one there. You got a great. I always told them what I seen to help them. But what I was looking for a breeding, I kept to myself. You know, if I seen something that I went above and beyond, that was the best thing I ever did with judging, is because I got to see some amazing dogs run. Yeah. And not, you know, because what you hear down there is nothing like being on top of them.
That's right, Dick. I've heard a lot of people describe judging, and I've judged in a little different format, the hunting beagle format in UKC. You're not necessarily running behind the dogs. You kind of judge in a lot of ways as a group at times. I don't think there's any substitute for being right there in the middle of the action. But I've never heard anybody describe it like the advantages to being a judge like you have. I mean, to be able to be there and actually see exactly what the dogs are doing right in the middle of the thick stuff when it gets tough, or when they change terrain, or when they get to the creek, when they get to the holler. That's really interesting. I've never heard anybody describe it like that. I think that's really, I don't know. I've just never heard anybody talk about it that way, and I've never heard anybody say that was a part of one of the biggest benefits to being a judge. So I appreciate you sharing that.
I didn't want to ever come back and criticize anybody's dog. You know, yeah, the dogs are going to make mistakes. I'm not coming back to you as a judge explaining every mistake and embarrass anybody I never did that as a judge. I told myself I'm not going to be that type of judge. I'm not going to go back and criticize. I want to find the goodness of what I seen that day, but I'm also going to keep what I seen that I wouldn't breed to myself. You know what I mean? I'm not wanting to hurt anybody's breeding programs, because you can breed it out of them. You know, I think that at some point in time, if people in time go home, and if they got a dog that's backtracking, you don't have to tell them it's backtracking. They're smart enough to know their dog's backtracking. You know, you don't need to make it a stage show. You know, and that's what I did. I just went out there and I give it all, and I got to see dogs that have special ability, and that's when I started to saying, okay, these are the bloodlines that led into when I started 30-06, you know. So.
Well, this is a good transition, because number one, again, I'm going to start looking at judging a little differently because of what you just told me. I'm there to evaluate the dogs, you know, record the score, but I should be, you know, also evaluating the dogs for potential use in my program at some point. I just love that. Well, I hope more people out there listening will apply that themselves. But you mentioned 30-06, and I was thinking about this earlier. I came from the coon hunting world too. I hunted red bones. You mentioned black and tans. I always appreciate, you know, the colored dogs, kind of the underdogs. I appreciate a good coon dog story. But when I first showed up, and I've only been doing this maybe 6-8 years or so, but one of the dogs I heard about early on from some of my friends was a dog named 30-06. This is before I knew anything about beagles. And so could you maybe share a little bit about the 30-06 story, maybe where he came from? You know, I see him on papers. You know, I see him on pedigrees quite often. But could you tell us a little history about him And, was he bred? How did he reproduce? Just whatever you want to share.
Okay, well, how we got the 30-06, you remember I told you earlier about old Doc.
Mm-hmm.
Well, old Doc, he lived to be close to 24 years old in our house.
Wow.
And, he was an old one.
That's a record.
Wish we could have had AKC paper to prove it, but we have when we picked him up, and my daughter was 18 years old, and he was still living, So,
wow.
But old Doc, when he reached that point that every good dog has their days, and, you did with his legs, we didn't want to push him too hard in competition where somebody bang into him, hurt that leg.
Mm-hmm.
We kind of let him go when he started getting older his own way and making, when he wanted to go, we'd take him. When he didn't, we didn't. He laid in the couch or on the chair or something, enjoyed life. His replacement, I remember our first RHA hunt out here at Kashak, and I watched a gentleman come over to support our club named Dennis Kennedy, a dear friend to this day.
Mm-hmm.
Recently, unfortunately, passed away from a motorcycle wreck, and my condolences to all his family. Dennis Kennedy came over and helped us and supported us, and he brought a 9-month-old pup over, and I watched the 9-month-old pup run, and his name was Red Man. He ended up winning our whole hunt, but what he did went beyond beagling. I watched him chase with a bunch of people on the gallery, standing there watching, because we took him to a place we could see what was going on. It's our first hunt. It's a runoff. And I watched him chase a rabbit into a big push pile, and out come a fox, and one of the dogs took off after a fox, and that 9-month-old pup, of course, took off to see what the dogs were barking out. He thought he had the rabbit, smelt the track, turned around, come back, and went back to that brush pile and tried to get that out. And that's a 9-month-old pup. And I told my buddy, I said, I'm going to own that dog.
Nice.
Well, he wasn't for sale that day. But later I went down, and I remember offering Dennis Kennedy $1,000. And at that time, that would be like $10,000 today.
Woo!
And it was around Christmas time, and I'm like, I've got to get him. And I had a chance to get his brother Bull, his father Bull, Big Meadows Bull, and I should have done that too, but I was out of money at this point in time.
Mm-hmm.
My father-in-law went half on it with me to help me out, but so we were kind of co-owners in him at some point. But Red Man was getting older. Of course, he started getting older, and I wasn't into the breeding stuff, kennel. I was breeding for myself. I had brothers that had Sundown Kennel. Dad come and got a pup off of me called Sundown Red Owl, and he put him in, and that goes back to Tess, most titled dog my brother has. But I give Red Owl to Dad, and I didn't really keep anything to breed off of, and it died. And here's where my brother Donnie come back in. It was a big part of 30-06 that some people don't even know about. Mm-hmm. Because I was ready to quit, when my dogs were starting to get older and so forth. And I was still active in all the clubs and stuff like that. But I was kind of like, okay, I'm done. He's like, no, redo it again with AKC dogs. Get you a bunch of AKC dogs. Do the same thing. You breed the same dogs. And I have to give Big Brother a lot of credit, because that's where I came back into the sport. And I said, okay, I'm going to go find some dogs. Mm-hmm. I'm going to buy a pair of dogs off anybody, all the top breeders I can find. I'm going to try to find as many great dogs as I can. Well, by the time I was done, I had 30.
Wow.
So I thought, okay, this would be great, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to take these 30 dogs, and I only want 2. Mm-hmm. But if I bring them 28 back, 28 dogs I don't want, and I give them away to people in our community, I'd help build our club too. Now I'm going to spend the money buying high dollar dogs, from Brico to, Merle to, Bill Johnson, Eugene Byers. I mean, I was all over the country traveling and finding a litter, trying to get them all about the same age,
right,
from the top bloodlines that I really liked. And when we were done, I narrowed it down to 6 dogs. So I had 30 dogs, and my wife's like ready to hang me in a tree because we lived in town.
Oh,
so
my
I'm
goodness.
Like maneuvering these dogs, and Jason Prater, he was laughing, because he was part of helping me collect them all and finding, young beaglers that people wanted to get into beagling. And Jason was a big support in finding owners for the dogs that wouldn't want to make it. But I took all 30 dogs to a guy named Art Scott. They actually named a road out of him, in Stone Creek, Ohio.
Mm-hmm.
And I went up and told Art, I said, what I've done is I've started, I bought 30 puppies, and I want you to start them off. I want you to shut down starting any dogs and tell me when, and I'm going to bring them all to you. Cycle them through at times until I want you to tell me when there's 2. Okay, I want to find 2 out of this bunch. Done it. Well, Art narrowed it down to 6.
Mm-hmm.
So when I left there and I looked at Art Scott, I said, I think I've got a 30-06 here. He said, I got 30, and out of 30 dogs, I had 6.
Oh, okay.
But 30-06 was a group of guys.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody thought it was like a kennel, but no, it wasn't. It was a group of guys. Andy Jones, judges today, Lance Roberts and his brother Merritt, and Andy Jones and Jason. And it was just so many people in our area that got their hands on some great dogs, and they made them AKC field champion. One of them's 30-06 Lulu, AKC field champion, and UKC Grand Hunting Beagle champion. So the 6 I kept were phenomenal dogs.
Mm-hmm.
How I got to Blitz and Fly, it was no rhyme to reason. A brother and sister was the 2 that made the 2 dogs that I was going to go with. And I got them, and I just ran them.
Mm-hmm.
I was able to get them with Redman. Redman was, Doc was able to pass his running style with the greatness and breeding program that Dennis Kennedy had going, and I was able to get that style that Doc had pushed onto Redman with what he already had. And then I took Redman and I put him with Blitz and Fly after they were just phenomenally started pups. And we went on from there. So that's how 30-06 got going. And I went with, I ended up, it was no rhyme to reason for brother or sister. But when what I did was I paired them up to who run the best together. And I put Lulu with like a pace setter dog I had. And, I put one was out of Ranger Dan with a Breedemeyer dog. And then I put one of Merle Crane's. I shuffled it in there a little bit. There were 6 of them all total. I think we were pivoted at that time on between one I got from Merle Crane and one I got from Buell Johnson. And that was Lulu. But we ended up bringing 6 back, and then I just narrowed it down to 2. And I seen 2 pups that was just absolute straightest dogs. They did things that went beyond beagling, that just went beyond beagling as far as their talent. They were out of Lake Ogama, Casey, and Larson's Jody. And that's how Blitz, I remember when I flew up in a little plane to Lake Michigan, I think it was, and I picked up, I was going up to watch a dog that Dale had run called Bullet, and I went up and watched him run in his big pen, and he didn't quite impress me like I thought it would. Mm-hmm. But I ended up, I seen a nice pup, and I'm like, what's the deal with this pup? I just loved how the dog was built. It was out of Striker. And I'm like, I'd like to have that dog. And I'm like, I'm going back. So I got that dog. I called my buddy and I said, hey, I got us a dog, Dan Wolf. We've traveled all over the country showing stuff out of Doc. He won like RHA Little World shows and unbelievable. The dog just won everything in the show and was a good field dog too. We just come back and told him, I said, hey, I got this dog. You got to have it. So he took that, and that was a dog. It was 30-06. I think we might have called him Jackknife or something, and he plays in the top 4 at the UKC Nationals in Holmesville. And for a guy just getting into UKC, he had a good ride. But it ended up being a relation to Donnie Ant's Sing It Girl, which was a really nice dog. So it was a good eye. I had a good eye for him. But Blitz and Fly was actually being born that day. Jody was having pups. And I called Dale, and he was at work, and his wife was showing me, and I'm like, I want to buy them 2 pups. So I bought them to throw them in the 30-06 bunch. Mm-hmm. And the reason for that is when I went to Eugene Byers to say, hey, I'd like to buy a male and female pup off of you to throw into my 30-06, I'm trying to find the best 2 dogs that I could ever run. And he pretty much run me off. He was, Eugene was like, I don't want to be a part of that. You get your dog somewhere else. I was like, okay, whatever. But me and Eugene ended up being great friends when I got my hands on Blitz and Fly from Dale Larson. That's actually where they come from. But he bred Lake Arkansas Casey to Larson's Jody. And it just clicked. I mean, there was all 30 of them dogs that I got were phenomenal dogs. Mm-hmm. Kudos to all the breeders. They were doing a great job. There was, I mean, we were really defining things down to just what I like. But every one of them 30 dogs had a home and made, one of them created Little Mighty Ozzy at UKC that you can research back. I mean, it was just unbelievable.
Well, what was it about? I mean, out of all those dogs, what was it about Blitz and Fly that made you like them? Why did you pick them? I mean, could you tell us a little bit about, how they hunted? What really stood out to you about those two?
Well, when I went up to the pen, Fly went up to the starting pen when it was her turn. She didn't go up the same time with Blitz. Blitz went up with a Breedemeyer. Breedemeyer and Shortacre cross. And anyway, Fly went up and she just started. He said she started within the first rabbit she seen, she went right straight to tracking. He said she just put her nose and stayed with it. He says, she was done in 4 days. She's like, this dog could circle her own rabbit in 4 days of training.
Love it.
And so she, so he called me. He said, I said, okay, I got Blitz. I'm going to bring him up to you. So I brought him up there, and he called me. And he said, you got to come get this dog. And I'm like, I can't. I'm going to work, and I got to go to work. I can't take him to work with me and leave him in the car all night. He's like, oh, you got to come get this dog. I'm like, he's only been up there 2 days. He's like, no. I said, how did he start? He started quick. He won't shut up. He won't quit. I said, well, he'll be all right just till the morning. And I remember I ended up, as soon as I got off early in the morning, I headed home real quick, got my cage, and headed back up to Arch. And I came in there, and I knocked on the door. And when I pulled in, I could hear him. He had his horn. It kind of sounded like a fire, one of the, tornadoes or sirens going off.
Yeah.
It was like, just rattled that holla. I mean, his horn it was beautiful to me. But when Art came out, it looked like, oh, my God, his eyes were all swelled up. He said, that dog ain't give us a minute's sleep in 2 days. And I'm like, boy, he sounds good. So I went up and caught him. And I brought him down and took him out. And it's like, oh, my God, what a machine. He was just – and then, I thought – I started running them together. And I thought, okay, you're not pairing up right with this dog. And you guys are going this way. I want you to work together. Mm-hmm. I want a pair of dogs that go in there and complement each other. One work the outside, one work the inside. I want every rabbit as quick as you can find it. Mm-hmm. And that's what I started doing and with the dogs. And then it was really tough narrowing that final 6 down. But it was when they come over top of the hill and there was a big old buck deer in front of them, and I'm sitting there thinking, okay, here we are. We got the shock collar ready. You know what I mean? And I'm like, I'm not going to shock you on a rabbit. I want to make sure you're on that deer track because I'm standing 6 feet from it. And here they come flying up over there, and lo and behold, there was a rabbit behind that deer.
Wow.
And I'm like, okay, let's see which direction you guys take. And they hooked that rabbit off that hot deer track during rut season. And I'm like, you two made the final cut. This is my decision. This is who I'm going to roll with. But earlier in the story, I didn't put this here. When we were coming back, Jason Prater went up with me, and we were coming back from Michigan with Blitz and Fly as puppies, just little, 8-week-old pups. And Jason's like, you got to give me one of them. And I'm like, you ain't getting the female. You can have the male. So he got Blitz. Mm-hmm. And I told him, and he had him over there, and he hadn't started him yet, but he got out and he chased him around town, and he's like, man, he's like lethargic sometimes. And I'm like, okay, I'll give you your money back and get him. So I went over and gave him his money back. He gave me for the pup, and I brought Blitz over but Jason named him Gridiron All Out Blitz. Mm-hmm. So that's, when Jason had him as a baby puppy, he called him Gridiron All Out Blitz. And I tease Jason all the time. It's like the biggest mistake he ever made on a dog in his life was that dog. And but I got him back. When he won the NHBA runoff and he won a big dog box, I took the dog box down and I put it in Jason's truck, and I think he still has it to this day. I'm not sure. Yeah, That's why he's got two names, an AKC Gridiron All-Out Blitz, and his 30-06 name was because he was a group of guys. 30-06 was a group of guys that took a chance on my vision, and it worked out well for him, and it helped build our club too. I mean, it really did, because it was a big loss for me financially, but it was a big gain for what was about to come. And the timing was right. Everything about starting a club, what we tapped on earlier, is about don't start a club at the wrong time. Watch the economy, watch what's happening. Try to, you don't, starting a club in the middle of COVID is, really tough.
Right.
But it's all about timing and camaraderie, people, interest in your community, and people just want to get into something.
Right.
Younger generation want to get into something, and most of it comes why people don't get into something because they just can't afford it.
Sure.
Yeah, and I just eliminated that whole deal. And you said you're good friends with Coy Stacy and Jeff Stacy. Great people. That's a lot of why you're the first person to ever get me on this, because I've turned these things down like oodles of times for a podcast.
Well, Dick, I got to tell you,
they're not my thing. It's just not my thing. I'd rather be cool in the shadows than burnt by the spotlight any day of the week.
Well, I appreciate that. My first beagle I actually got from Coy and Jeff, and this is just a little story, real quick one. But I had just started in this beagling thing. I didn't know what in the world I was doing, and actually went to it was one of the first year. It was either the first year or second year I had a beagle, and I was really enjoying the hunts, and decided, well, why not go to this thing up north that they call the McVay hunt. I really don't know what that's about, but Jeff and some of the folks from down here were making the trek, and I thought, well, I'll go too. And I went up there, and I remember it was a Thursday evening hunt. I believe they brought in all these former champions or something, and you could go out and hunt with them. They broke them into cast that particular year, and I remember tying my dog out and patting him on the head, and we went out and hunted, and I hunted with some world champion dogs. I mean, I thought I was just big time, and I get back, and my dog's gone. And I'm like, oh, my goodness, somebody has stolen my dog. I've never had this happen before, and I was spun up about it, trying to stay calm, and I went to almost like a front desk area, kind of the happening place on the farm, and there was a lady sitting there, and I was like, ma'am, somebody didn't happen to find a dog that got loose, did they? And she said, well, was he a big blanket back male? And I said, yeah. And she goes, he's just right there behind you. He's a friendly rascal. He just came up here earlier, and I just tied him right there. And it was your mom. And that was the McVay hunt. And I wanted to ask you about that too. How did that get started? It just happened again. At the taping of this, I think the McVay hunt was maybe a week or two back. That's been a big time hunt. I've never seen as many prizes given away in my life as I had at something like that. The hunting was very good. One of the best run hunts I've ever been to. But I just had such a good time. I can understand why people put that one on their calendar to do every year. But could you share a little bit about maybe how that got started, and from in the beginning, kind of how it got started to what it is today? Thank you for joining us for part one of our interview with Dick McVay. Thank you for listening to Buff in the Rough, and remember to like and subscribe if you want to be notified when we have new content available. Please send comments and suggestions to buffintherough@gmail.com. Join us next time where we'll pick up in part two of our interview with Dick McVay to talk about the Don McVay Sr. Memorial Hunt, special memories of 30-06 Blitz, the My Dog Has Skills sporting dog event game, and a whole lot more.